coming out, and especially it's freezing cold outside, so I really appreciate the fact that you guys came out. So, my name is Marie Delus, and I want to thank everybody for allowing me to come and tell my story. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. I lived in Brooklyn, New York, and it was at that time I was 17 and I wanted to go to college. And my mom broke the news to me that we had no money, so I couldn't go to college, and she didn't want to sign for a loan. So during that time, I didn't want to stay home. I actually wanted to go out of state, and she wouldn't allow me. So during my senior year, a recruiter came to the school, and he gave us this whole big, great story about being in the military, how you're going to travel, they're going to pay your way, you're going to get a car, you're going to get a house, you're going to go to college. So I joined. And at that time also, I got into, when I researched it, every research came back that the Marine Corps was the best, the highest. And I always wanted to be the best, so that's why I joined the Corps. I think one of the reasons why I wanted to join the Corps and I wanted to be the best is because when I was a kid in school, I'm Haitian descent. So being Haitian in the 1980s and 90s wasn't a great thing. You were bullied when you were Haitian. And I was bullied so much that I couldn't fight for myself. You know, so I got slapped in school, spit on and everything, and I was just pretty much a coward when I was a young person. Until I got to about 16 and a half, 17. And a kid at the block threw a rock at my baby sister, she started crying, and I just lost it. That's when I snapped. And that was my first fight ever. You know, so that was the formative years, like, you know, being bullied, being picked on. All of a sudden I found my voice, and I started to fight back. Turned around that I couldn't go to the college I wanted to. Marine Corps, the recruiter came to this high school, told me what a great life it is, and I wanted to be the best, so I joined the Corps. I went to boot camp, and while I was in training, I actually had a boyfriend back home, and I was so miserable without him that we actually ended up eloping right when I was in my MOS school. That's the training school. A couple of months after I eloped, I found out I was pregnant. And I had two choices at the time. I could either be discharged or I could go in the individual ready reserve. I don't know if that's the same option they have now, but back in the days you could choose. You could either be discharged. The ladies is like, no. But back in the days, in the 1980s, late 1980s, you could either be discharged. I decided that I didn't want to be discharged because I signed a contract, of course, still the hype. I wanted to be Marine, I wanted to be the best. And so I decided I wanted to go to the IRR. Individual Ready Reservists, I think you only have like 2 weeks of service during the year and going like once every year back in the days. That was a long time ago, so things may have changed. My marriage didn't last because it was a very violent marriage. Actually, it was a domestic abuse situation. So after 3 years, I ended up being divorced with 2 kids. And I was making $19,000 a year back then. And even back then, $19,000 a year was very difficult to live with. I mean, it's impossible now, but it was difficult. So in my infinite wisdom, I decided, first I got a job. When I got divorced, I actually moved to California. Then I came back here with my 2 children. And when I came back here, I was actually lucky because my ex-husband was able to help me pay for all my bills while I work. But then he lost his job. So I had the problem now of not being able to pay my bills, so I had a choice. I either gonna, leave my job and get public assistance, because even with $19K, I was making too much money to get public assistance. All they were allowed to give me was food stamp. But in my infinite wisdom, I decided, let me go back to the military. So I decided to leave the IRR and go back into the reservists. So I went into the reservists on August 2nd, 1990. And the U.S. went into war, and then I was reactivated to active duty on December 1st, 1990. I considered staying home because back in the days, again, if you got pregnant and you have children, you could actually ask to be left home, right? You didn't have to be activated. I could have stayed in reserve status. I spoke to my first sergeant. My first sergeant was like, okay, you could put in for it, but the officer's not going to be happy about it. So I just decided not to do that because I didn't want to get the flack, and I really did not want to be left behind. For some reason, I felt it was like, deserting my position if I was left behind. So I decided that I left my kids with my ex-husband and with my roommate. So I pretty much spent the entire war. So I'm thinking I was going to war. There's a storm. I was actually on a flight out list, and I was called my family, tell my family I'm about to go overseas, blah, blah. The day of that I was supposed to go overseas, I was pulled off the list. And it seems that my officers, even though they didn't want me to stay home, they didn't want me to go overseas either. So they put a stop to that. So I spent my entire war time in Camp Lejeune. Now, I was miserable when I was in Camp Lejeune because all of my guys was left behind. My experience is sort of different from most of the female women Marine I met now. Now we're not even called female Marine, we're not called women Marine, we call Marines. So the Marines that I know from the female persuasion, my experience was different because back in the days, I had the best friends I've ever had was the guys in the military. I used to hang out with these guys, we used to sleep in the same area, in the same bunk. I had any problems with the guys. I mean, they used to tease me, but I didn't have the sexual harassment aspect with my platoon guys. But then I was left in Camp Lejeune, so I was miserable, I was unhappy for a very long time. And then I met another group of great guys, and I hung out with them. And all we did was drink and lift weights and just had a great time. I really never had any problems in the military. So I stayed back and I became I worked in supply clerk. And I also worked in the officers' camp. But I was also one of those big, loud-mouthed women, right? So even though I actually enjoyed my time with the guys in the military, there were some people that would try you, right? They would just say something suggestive, or they would put something out there. I was the type of person that says, if you come next to me and you look at me, I'm gonna stab you. I used to actually carry a knife on me at all times. Oh yeah, I used to carry a knife on me at all times. I mean, I used to be in a room full of these guys, and I'd be like, you know, if anybody touched me, I'm taking everybody down with me. So I was pretty lucky in that part, where, first of all, I had some great guys. Second of all, I was considered the crazy one. They treated me like a sister. But I was left behind. So they came back. The war ended very early, you know, about approximately 3 months. And when my guys came back, I was also left behind in Camp Lejeune because they went home and I was still there. May 24th, 1991 is when I returned to Amerville, Camp Lejeune. Amerville, Long Island. Since I served in the military for the 3 months, I'm considered a veteran. I'm actually so-called a decorated veteran. I received the National Defense Service Ribbon. However, I never really thought of myself as a veteran, a real veteran. Because to me, a veteran is a hero, right? Even though a lot of us don't want to call ourselves a hero. But to me, especially back in the days, if you serve your country, you serve a war, you're a hero. And I never considered myself a hero whatsoever. So I often battled with the term of being a veteran. I battled with the time of being thanked. You know, people will come to you and they say, thank you for your service. I'm like, I didn't do anything. All I did was sat in Camp Lejeune pretty much and had a good time with my guys. You know what I'm saying? But then every once in a while, I'll remember that one of my roommates who actually, you know, was in the same room with me, and I can't even remember her name right now, but she was really sweet. And she was a white girl, and she was a Caucasian, whatever the proper terminology is. And she was very friendly, and she ended up pretty much hanging out with a bunch of guys also when she went out drinking. And then two of the guys that she came back home with, those two guys raped her in the room, which ended up to be her room, right, our room. Now, so I remember that. I remember that happened to her. I also remember that during the time of war, there was that one period of time where they told us that the missile was about to come and attack the United States, so we were on 24-hour duty. So even though we weren't overseas, we were here, we still had the same pressures, the same, you know, situation that our counterparts had overseas. But I think my story is a lot more lucky because when I speak to the female veterans or the women or the Marines now, the situation that they've gone through, I have not gone through. So even though I haven't gone through devastating experiences, I still continue with my life. I raised my kids. The Marine had a very positive, it was just a really great experience for me. And then one day I got a call from my sister-in-law, her name is Annette, and she asked me to come over to the house. And I came over to the house because she wanted me to speak to my nephew, Nicholas White, because he wanted to join the Marine Corps. First thing I told Nicholas White was, hell no, you're not going to the Marine Corps. So what the hell? You know, I mean, first of all, we were just getting into the Iraq War. Why you go to the Marine Corps? You are a college student, stay in college. But no, he wanted to go. I always wanted to be a soldier. I said, that's bullshit. You never want to be a soldier. Why is it all of a sudden you want to be a soldier? We had an intense conversation. I remember the conversation to this day, and I'm telling you, if you go, you're going to die. I said, if you go to the Marine Corps, you're going to die. And he looked at me and he's like, why are you giving me a hard time when you joined the Marines? And you had a great time, and you had great stories. So why are you giving me a hard time? And I had to look at him because I just couldn't give him a direct answer, except to say that if you go over, you're going to die because we're in a time of war. Nicholas died in Ramadi, Iraq on June 24, 2006, 2 days before his 22nd birthday. Nicholas' death had a very strong impact on me. I was extremely angry. I mean, I was angry, guilt-ridden. I just was frustrated. There was a period of time where I couldn't go to the church. I definitely wasn't speaking to God. As a prayer warrior, most of you might think that was, scandalous, but I didn't have anything to do with God. I didn't have nothing to do with church. I wasn't going to funerals. If I went to funerals, I would go to the wake. I would go a half an hour before it ended. Don't give me spiritual comments, and don't talk to me about the church. I'm not going to sit there and listen to the priest talk about how it's best that he was young and he was taken away, but God is welcoming him. Bull. I didn't want to hear any of that for several years. I didn't want to talk to anyone. And it was during that time now that when I started getting over my grief, that I received an email out of nowhere to join a writer's class for veterans. And at first I didn't want to go, but I know I wanted to tell a story. So I started to go to the class, and it was called the Royal Writers, and then I joined others. And I realized that I wanted to actually help these veterans in any way possible, either by showing up to their events, by speaking, by giving them my experiences, just to help. And I think I was doing it in memory of Nicholas, because I think that I felt that I couldn't help Nikki, so maybe I could help others. Also during that time, I decided I wanted to join the American Red Cross because I wanted to volunteer, and I actually volunteered for 5 years. And then June 12, 2010, there was an earthquake in Haiti. I've never been to Haiti. I think I went to Haiti when I was a baby, but I don't remember it, where 250,000 residents was killed, and I was determined to go to Haiti to help. So I went back and forth to Haiti for like 9 times, and it was during that time that I started realizing that I needed to be active in helping people. Whether it's called saving people, helping people, I just wanted to help people. Then December 14, 2012, a gunman went into elementary school and killed 20 children and 6 educators. I think that's when everything, even during all that time after Nicholas died, and I also lost a nephew due to gun violence. His name is Pierre-Paul Jean-Paul. He actually was killed on November 11, 2008. But I think Nicholas' death was like the first tipping point that so much so it affected me that even Pierre-Paul death didn't affect me. But December 14th, those little children that completely tipped over my world. I realized that I could no longer just sit around and just live my life and carry on. So I joined an organization called Miles Demand Action for Gun Sense, and now I'm a gun safety advocate. And during the past few years since Nicholas died, I faced gunmen, I faced angry mobs in Haiti, I faced politicians, I faced gun enthusiasts. I mean, I can't tell you which is more dangerous, whether it's Haiti, the mobs, the gunmen, or the politicians, but I face them all down, right? So I wonder sometimes, am I seeking the glory that I am consciously left behind by not going overseas? I mean, I also wonder, do I deserve to be called a Marine Corps veteran? I can't answer that question. However, I do believe that all soldiers who served during the time of war, whether nationally or internationally, are heroes. And while I was doing all in my writings class, I actually wrote a poem, if you guys don't mind me reading it, about how I felt about myself as a veteran. It's called An Ode to a Veteran Non-Hero. You lay alone and suffer, for your dream was never told. An exquisite corpse of yesteryear for the fight that never was. All alone, you thought you were a hero never heard. Now you lie alone and weep for the one you never were. Until the last soldiers go, they say, but you know it wasn't true. Oh, the relief you felt when you found out it wasn't you. You sad and miserable corpse, will they ever know the truth of the courage you never sought, of the hero they thought they knew? Imagine all the sadness and grief of the hero who isn't true. You're a liar, you're fake, you deviant, what a pretty corpse is you. So with all the emotion and speech is so fine, I wonder what they say once they heard the truth of the hero who didn't go, of the lovely corpse, the veteran non-hero, the hero that is you. Thank you guys for listening.